Hi there. I'm going to do another little mechanical project video series here on servicing a Honda Rincon. This one is the 680 fuel injected model. The 650 carbureted is pretty similar, other than it has drum front brakes. After the initial service, which I think is due at 20 hours or something like that, I think it's every 100 hours again to do the engine oil filter, the air filter, to check the suspension and the brakes, and some other miscellaneous checks. And then every 2 years, the gear oil in both differentials needs to be changed, the brake fluid needs to be changed, and the coolant needs to be changed. So let's go over some of the supplies we need. First, of course, an assortment of hand tools and some torque wrenches. Personally, I prefer to run the genuine Honda oil filter. There are other brands to fit this machine. It takes a different filter than most of the other Honda line. The Foreman and Ranchers and all that use the same filter, but it's different than what the Rincon takes. Oil-wise, for most climates, we're going to be looking for a 1040 weight. In colder climates, you'd want to run something thinner. I don't think I'd really use anything heavier. Needs to be rated API SG or higher. The S basically indicates it's a rating for a spark ignition, in other words a gasoline engine, and then they went SG, SH, they skipped SI. SJ then came out, which doesn't have a friction modifier in it that contains zinc. The reason they went to SJ without the zinc was for cars to meet their 100,000 mile emissions, as that additive had a tendency to cause problems with the catalytic converter. Not an issue for ATVs. The other reading it needs to have is the JASOMA rating. Basically, that's a motorcycle specific rating that the oil is suitable for wet clutches. The Rincon, like I guess pretty much all of the Honda ATVs, shares oil between the engine and the transmission, or the engine and a wet clutch. So we need that MA rating to make sure we don't screw up the clutches in the transmission. Also, nothing with MOLLE, nothing with PTFE, for the same reasons. It will mess up the clutches in wet clutch applications. I chose Honda's HP4 semi-synthetic, but there's a variety of oils that meet those requirements. Just make sure you pay attention to that MA rating. Coolant-wise, the thing calls for the traditional coolant, or traditional chemical coolant, basically ethylene glycol, not HOD or Dexcool or any of the other extended change coolants. Again, we'll use a motorcycle specific product. A lot of the automotive coolants contain silicates or other abrasives to control corrosion that are too harsh for the little water pumps you find in motorcycles and ATVs. Also, traditional ethylene glycol starts to lose its corrosion protection in 2 years, and that's why we change it. Occasionally you run into people that use a little coolant tester and go, oh, my coolant's fine. Well, that tests the concentration of the ethylene glycol in solution and shows you what its freeze protection is, but it doesn't indicate how it's doing as far as anti-corrosion goes. And radiators and so on being expensive, change it on schedule. Anyhow, this Honda coolant and most other motorcycle specific coolants comes pre-mixed with distilled water, so it's ready to use. The thing takes a little over 2 quarts, I believe. And another note, a lot of times when I do coolant on an engine, I like to flush the engine out with water. But in the case of motorcycles and ATVs, because I'm using a pre-mixed coolant, I don't do that. A lot of the water that you use to flush would remain in low spots in coolant passages and that sort of thing, and you'd end up with a weaker concentration than you wanted if you were to flush it and drain it and then fill it with a 50-50 premix. On trucks, stuff like that, I'll rinse it pour some distilled water through it, let it drain out, and pour in a volume of straight antifreeze that's equal to half the coolant capacity of the vehicle, and then top it off with distilled water. And that way you get your proper 50-50 mix, even if there's water left over when you rinsed it. Front and rear differentials, spec calls for a 80 weight gear oil. Should be API, American Petroleum Institute, rating GL5. GL indicates it's a gear oil, and the 5 is basically a rating for Hypoid Gears. Hypoid Gears, by the way, are essentially a normal set of bevel gears. The two shafts are in the same plane, and with a Hypoid system, the pinion gear is actually not on the same plane. Basically, the axis of that gear isn't on the same axis as the ring gear. So you have kind of a helical cut to the gears, and the gear faces actually slide across each other as they mesh. Kind of like, I guess you could think of it as halfway between a set of bevel gears and a worm and crown system. So, needs good protection. Make sure it's a GL5 rated oil. Also, if you go through swamps a lot, you're going to want to change the oil in the differentials more frequently, or at least check it for water contamination. And then finally we'll need supplies to service the air filter. It has a foam type air filter in it, and personally I really like this Pro Honda BIOS stuff. Once you get the original petroleum based filter oil out of the filter element, cleanup is really easy. Their filter oil won't wash out with gas or diesel or kerosene like people traditionally clean filters with. In fact, it'll turn into a slimy mess. So the kit came with a little sticker to put on the air box so somebody else services if they don't do that. It does, however, clean really easily with this powdered soap and some warm water. No stink. It cleans it really effectively. And once it's dried, then usually use a zipper storage bag, and this oil is really, really sticky and seems to trap grease really well and doesn't wash out. So anyhow, that's about that as far as supplies go. First thing I'll need to do is drop the plow blade off of this thing and also get the engine warm. We want to drain the oil after the engine's running. Some people think just because the oil's hot it runs out faster, but also we actually want any particulate matter, wear materials, whatever that are in the engine to not be settled out in the oil passages. We want that stuff in suspension in the oil so that we get as much of those contaminants out of the vehicle as possible. Okay, so we've gotten the plow off the quad here and the engine's warm. It's ready for us to start on the oil change. The dipstick on these is on the left side of the engine, and the oil fill resides under this little cover here. We'll go ahead and wipe the dirt off of that and open it to let air come in when we change the oil. And the filter is on the right side of the engine, under that cover right there. The drain plug is kind of strange looking on these. Hopefully that gets a good shot of it. It's kind of horizontal in there. It's a big, long, funky looking plug, 17 millimeter head. So we'll just go ahead and we'll put a socket on that, pull that bolt. It's a long, funky looking thing like I mentioned. Also, as far as oil disposal goes, remember to be environmentally conscious about it. I'm really fortunate here that Vidal's Disposal provides curbside recycling of motor oil, but motor oil really contaminates a lot of fresh water, so be sure to dispose of it properly.